Okay, Mom and Dad bought this place, I think it was in 1953. It was the year I started in first grade out at North Elton Elementary. At that time, the barn set back off to my left, out where near that walnut tree out next to the road, between the walnut tree and the mulberry tree. And Dad had this grass lot here on my left was fenced in the pasture. So not the first grade, but after I was up maybe in the fourth or fifth grade, Mom and Dad had a cow, and it was my job to milk the cow. And so I would go out there with the milk bucket, and the cow would come up the barn, and the barn wasn't as big as it is right now. It didn't have the enclosure on the left or the right. So, but the enclosure, this part here where the doors are, that was fenced in. So the cow would come in there, and I would milk the cow. Well, that went on for a few years. Then I got a little older. Mom and Dad bought a horse. So that's a little saddle horse, and it was named Dolly. Well, it turns out that my grandpa and grandma Holder had a horse that was named Dolly. So that's where the name Dolly came from. Well, Dolly would come up to the barn when I was going to milk, and I'd feed her. Well, she'd go in to the last stall, and I would had some oats in there for her, and I'd close the door so she wouldn't bother me while I was milking. So I was sitting in there in the open area of the barn, milking the cow, and she had food to eat. So I would get through milking. I didn't have to go to let the horse out. The cow would finish her food. She would turn around and go over to the stall where the horse was and take her horn and lift the latch on the door. And then she would step back, and the horse would come bolting out of the stall and run check to see if there's any food left in the cow's box. And then she would go inside the stall and try to find food in the horse box. So after they checked everything out, they'd go back out in the pasture and graze, and I'd go on to the house with the milk bucket. So that went on for several years. I don't know how long, but that was the routine. But at some point then, a few years later, Dad decided to move the barn from that location out here. And Dad and Uncle Clyde and Uncle Herman put their heads together. How are we going to move this barn? So they got some poles, and they jacked up the barn and got the poles under it and set it back down, and it hooked up some chains or something to the barn, and they pulled it with a tractor. They would roll it along, and as it rolled off of a pole, they'd pick it up and bring it around to the front, lay it down again, and kept switching out these poles till they got it rolled out here. And they spun it, let's see, it would have been about 90 degrees or a little more to get it rotated to where it is now. And jacked it up, got it off the poles, and set it back down on some block foundations. And then Dad enclosed the side over here, I think, first, and then did that, and then he did the shed on the back side of it. And so, at the original configuration, this door to the loft didn't exist. It was a door over the other end. So they got out here, and he decided he wanted a door here, so he took his saws and opened it up and made a door on this end too. So that's how the barn ended up out here to this location. But when I was a kid, about where the barn is sitting, it's where he had his pig lot. Well, he would raise 2 pigs every year, and he was kind of well known for making country hams. But he did that himself, and Dad and Herman and Clyde again butcher the hogs, and they would, Mom and Grandma and Aunt Bertie, and they would cook out the lard out of the fat back, and then take the tenderloin, cut it up into chunks, and can the tenderloin, and Dad would cure the hams and the shoulders. Well, up here in the old boat shed, there's a green box up there that Dad salted the meat down to cure it. So one year, a little funny story, Dad bought 2 pigs. One of them would, it was fattening up real good, and the other would not get fat. And they was gray. Dad would feed them and feed them. Well, this one is just skinny as it could be, and then it started jumping out of the fence. So when I got home from school, I had to go catch the pig, put it back in the pig box. Well, this went on for a long time, and it got to the point I didn't even have to ask Mom, was the pig out? I just come in, toss my books down the chair. Come on, go catch the pig, put him up. Dad got aggravated one day. He said, that's enough. He loaded the thing up in the pickup truck and took it to the stock sale and sold the pig.
Yeah. Now, do you have any experience loading hay in the loft?
Yeah, that was when the barn was out here, and was using the door on the opposite end. I would feed the livestock their hay, which it wasn't baled, it was just loose straw. I get a loose hay. I take a pitchfork, toss it down, then I'd throw the pitchfork down and stick it up in the ground like a spear.
Okay.
I would climb down, feed the livestock, and then when I come back up, I get that spear and I just chuck it right up through the door opening. Well, one day that didn't work too good. I missed the door open. The pitchfork hit the wall of the barn, and it did a 180 and came back at me, and I had to jump back. But one of the tines hit me on the top of my foot. I was barefooted, right through my foot, and just pinned my foot down to the ground. So I had to pull the pitchfork out and go hobbling in the house and tell Mom that I'd put a pitchfork through my foot.
Oh, mercy.
So here we go to the doctor. It wasn't bleeding because it was just a little small puncture wound, but get a tetanus shot and some antibiotic. Came on back home.
Boy. Let's take a quick walk through, and you just tell us what the little rooms were originally.
Okay. Again, these doors were not here. They just opened, but Dad had nailed some boards up and I had a gate here. Some years Dad would buy a little calf from a dairy farm, and he would he'd buy powdered milk and had a bucket with a nipple, so he'd feed the little calf till he got weaned and started eating food. But this is where we keep the little calves when he was doing that. This door was the feed room, and it had a floor in it at that point in time, and that's where the horse, cattle, and chicken feed was kept. And this last stall was where we put the horse in while I was milking the cow. And that horse would again raise the latch with her horn and let the horse out when she was through eating her food. So yeah, a lot of memories growing up here. And,
Of course, this was the tractor bay.
yeah,
I'm going to zoom back out a little bit.
Dad's first tractor was a little Farmall Cub, and then he bought a 140, and he kept it for several years, and then he traded that 140, and he got the Massey Ferguson tractor.
All
And then he
right.
got the John Deere and the G, and had those. The G was his garden tractor, and the John Deere was just his toy. He and Clyde built one alike. So each of them had a L.A. John Deere, and they enjoyed doing projects like that. Too much so, because they left 3,100 pounds of scrap metal here for us to haul.
One crib, shop. I guess, like we always do, today's October 21st,
I think so, yeah.
2023. You're how old?
I'm 76 years old.
How old were you when you moved here?
I was 6 years old.
How old were you when you moved out?
Well, when I guess I was 18, I graduated from high school and went to Forsyth Tech, and I lived at Opie and Dallas's house for a while when I was going to Forsyth Tech.
Okay, good.